Welcome to Introductory Logic, the science and art of reasoning well. We're in Chapter 1, Lesson 2, Genus and Species. If we think about the term food, we can also think of many different kinds of food, such as meat, dairy products, fruit, vegetables, and grain. And these are different categories of the term food. Well, we have a special name for these categories. In this case, we would call the term food a genus, and we would call the terms meat, dairy, fruit, vegetables, and grain species. They would all be species of the genus food. A genus is simply a term that is more broad, general, or abstract than the original term, and it includes the original term. So in this case, food is a genus of the term dairy. A species is a term that is more specific, narrow, or concrete than the original term, and is included by it. So the term meat would be a species of food. Likewise, fruit is a species of food. Another way to think of this is that a genus is a category that something else fits into. It's a category that something else is a kind of or a type of, whereas a species is a kind or a type of something. This little chart that we've drawn is called a genus and species hierarchy. Genus and species are relative terms. Any term can be both a genus and a species. For example, the term dairy is a species of the term food, but dairy can also be broken down into some other kinds of dairy products, and so it can be a genus of the terms butter, cheese, and milk. And so in this case, butter, cheese, and milk would be a species of dairy. Dairy is in turn a species of food. We could also find some species of the term grain. So while grain is a species of food, it's a genus of wheat, barley, and rye. And as you can imagine, we could break this table down even further. With the term cheese, we could think of some other types of cheese. What kind of cheese can you think of? American cheese, Swiss cheese, cheddar cheese. What about milk? Are there some different kinds of milk, some species of milk? See what you can think of. 2% milk, skim milk, buttermilk, chocolate milk. And so we could make this table go on and on. In fact, we can even expand this hierarchy upward. Remember, we started with food as our original genus, but we could also think of food as a species of essential human needs. And so what would some other species of essential human needs be? Oxygen, heat, water. And we can expand this table upwards and downwards and outwards, really as far as we can imagine. Eventually we would probably run out of ideas, but I think you get the picture. Now be sure not to confuse our genus and species hierarchy with anything you might have learned in biology. While the chart is very similar and the words are similar, in logic we only use genus and species. We don't use kingdom, phylum, class, order, and all this other. And so we just keep using genus and species over and over, and remember that something can be both a genus and a species. Let's look at the term logic. Logic can be categorized into formal logic and informal logic. And likewise, informal logic can be a genus of induction and deduction. These are the different kinds of informal logic. Well, the terms formal logic and informal logic are mutually exclusive and they are exhaustive. That is, there are no other kinds of logic besides formal logic and informal logic. It's exhaustive. There is nothing else. They're also mutually exclusive, which means there is no overlap. There is no kind of logic that would fit into both the species of formal logic and informal logic. Likewise, induction and deduction are the only kinds of informal logic that are possible. And so they are exhaustive. There's no other possible species that could go on that chart. And they are mutually exclusive. There is no overlap. In our previous table, when we looked at, dairy products, well, there may be some other dairy products. So this is not necessarily an exhaustive species list of dairy products. This is not an exhaustive species list of food. There are other kinds of food that might go on here. Maybe there might be some overlap. Oh, is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? Maybe sometimes you might consider it one or the other. Are eggs, are they meat or are they dairy products? So maybe these aren't completely mutually exclusive and exhaustive. But in this case, the species here are mutually exclusive and they are exhaustive. Now let's talk about some mistakes that we can make when we are considering genus and species. The first mistake is that we don't want to have overlapping species. For example, if we look at the term people and we say that, well, there are two kinds of people. There are two species of people. There are women and there are lawyers. Well, obviously that is wrong because it is not mutually exclusive. There are other kinds of people who are neither women nor lawyers. Plus, well, that would be exhaustive. They're not exhaustive, but they're not mutually exclusive because women and lawyers may overlap. There could be some people who are women and who are lawyers. A better way to make this chart would be to say women and men, and then it would be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. Mistake number 2, putting terms at the wrong level of the hierarchy. In our food chart that we looked at earlier, if we broke it down into meat, cheese, fruit, vegetables, and grain, well, cheese doesn't belong at the same level as meat and fruit. Those are higher level species. And so cheese is too high up in the chart, in the hierarchy. Cheese should be categorized within the dairy products, which is not shown here on the chart. Mistake number 3, using ambiguous terms. If we're looking at the term ball, well, what are some kinds of balls? There are baseballs and there are midwinter balls. No, these are ambiguous terms. The term ball could mean a round thing that you throw or kick, or it could mean a fancy party that little girls dress up and go to, like Cinderella. Two very different things. And so the word ball is ambiguous, and so we have some species here that have nothing to do with each other. And mistake number 4, making a chart that's showing parts of a whole, or a whole to parts chart. If we have the case of the term bicycle, well, what are some kinds of bicycles? Frame and pedals. No, those aren't kinds of bicycles. Those are parts of bicycles. Frames, pedals, sprockets, chains, handlebars, flags, gears, all those things are parts of bicycles, and that's not what we're interested in here. We're interested in kinds of bicycles. So how could we fix this chart? There are 2 ways. We could change our genus to bicycle parts, and now frame and pedals are kinds of bicycle parts. Well, it's not exhaustive. There are many more parts, many more things that are kind of bicycle parts, but still it's a correct chart. We could also change our species here to kinds of bicycles. A mountain bike, a street bike, maybe there are some other type of bicycles. So again, this isn't an exhaustive list of species, but we haven't confused it with whole to parts. So take a close look at this page and make sure that you understand the difference between species being a kind of something and not a part of something. To summarize, terms can be organized into genus and species charts. A genus is a category into which a given term fits, and a species is a type, kind, or example of a given term. Species should be mutually exclusive and they may be an exhaustive list.